She's staring at a magazine cover in her shaking hands. "That's you," she whispers. He doesn't answer. He just looks at his own photograph, like it belongs to a stranger. Rewind. 12 hours. This is where it actually starts. Nell had $4, a bus pass, and a job interview she couldn't afford to lose. She wasn't looking for a stranger in the rain. She was looking for a reason to believe the month wasn't going to end in eviction. But then she saw him, soaked to the bone, sitting like the alley belonged to him, not the other way around. Most people, broken by the street, learn to make themselves small. He hadn't. And when their eyes met, something about him didn't add up. She just knew it made her stop walking. She gave him the only money she had left. He gave her something back she didn't expect. His full attention, his gratitude, and a wound he was clearly trying to hide. She should have walked away. She had every reason to. Instead, she said 4 words that changed both their lives. "Come with me, please." Here's what Nell didn't know yet. The man she just offered to help couldn't remember his own name. Not because of the wound, because of something else. A wrongness sitting under his skin, like a language he used to speak fluently and had suddenly forgotten. He didn't know he was dangerous. He didn't know he was worth more money than she'd see in 10 lifetimes. He didn't know that somewhere across the country, people were already looking for him, and not all of them wanted to bring him home safely. All he knew was that for the first time since waking up in that alley, he didn't feel like he was drowning. This is a story about a woman who fell in love with a man before she knew what he was, and a man who became someone worth loving right up until the moment his old life came looking for him. Stay till the end, because the version of him she fell for, and the version the world is about to demand back, might not be the same person at all. Let's go back to where it started. Nell hadn't slept more than 4 hours. Not because of nerves about the interview, though there were plenty of those, but because her landlord had called twice after midnight, and both times she'd let it ring out. 3 weeks behind on rent. A portfolio held together with a binder clip, because the real one had broken months ago. A single pair of interview-appropriate shoes that pinched with every step. She wasn't chasing a dream job. She was chasing enough money to keep the lights on. The rain had turned the sidewalk into a mirror, gray sky reflected in every puddle. She was already 15 minutes late when she cut through the alley, a shortcut she only took when she couldn't afford to lose more time. That's when she saw him, soaked through, no umbrella, no shelter, sitting on cardboard that had long since dissolved into pulp beneath him. Nell had passed people like this before. She knew better than most how easy it was to end up with nothing. But something about the way he sat stopped her. He wasn't hunched. He wasn't trying to disappear. His spine was straight, like the alley was something he was enduring, not something that owned him. And when he looked up, his eyes were an amber she'd never seen on another person in her life. She wasn't paying attention to the uneven pavement. Her foot caught, and everything in her arms went flying. Her wallet, her lunch, every pen she owned, scattering into the wet street. She was already on her knees gathering it, when she noticed his hands moving beside hers. Not toward her wallet, toward the pen that had rolled furthest away. He held everything out to her, unhurried, like a man with nowhere else to be, because, she realized, he didn't. "I believe these are yours," he said. She had $4 folded in her coat pocket, bus fare, maybe dinner, if the interview went badly enough that she needed comfort food on the walk home. She didn't think about it long enough to talk herself out of it. "For you," she said, pressing the bills into his palm. "Get something warm to eat." The way he looked at her, like she'd done something rare instead of something small, stayed with her longer than she expected. She was 2 steps into leaving when she saw it. A dark stain spreading across the pavement beneath him, hidden, until now, by shadow and rain. "You're hurt," she said. He glanced down at his side, like the information surprised him. "It's nothing." It wasn't nothing. His lips had a color they shouldn't have had, and the fabric at his ribs was darker than wet should make it. She thought about the interview, about her rent, about every reason she had to keep walking. Then she held out her hand instead. "Come with me. What's yours?" she asked, once the silence had stretched long enough to need filling. He opened his mouth. Nothing came. "I can't remember," he said finally, and for the first time since she'd noticed him, he looked less like a man enduring hardship with dignity and more like someone standing at the edge of something he couldn't see the bottom of. The rain kept falling between them. The pharmacist rang up the supplies before Nell had even finished counting what was in her wallet. $43. She had 18. Heat rose in her cheeks as she started to explain, but the pharmacist only asked, gently, if she had anything at home that could substitute. Peroxide, rubbing alcohol, bandages, at least, she could still afford. It wasn't enough. It would have to be. Her apartment was small, tired, nothing like the world he seemed built for, though neither of them knew that yet. She handed him clothes that used to belong to someone she didn't want to think about anymore, and pointed him toward the shower. While the water ran, she tried to reschedule the interview. The receptionist hung up before she finished the sentence. One version of her morning had just ended. She didn't yet know what the new one was going to cost her. Morning light through a cracked window. He's examining her bookshelf, second-hand paperbacks, nothing special, when his hand stops on one spine. The Brothers Karamazov. "Have you read it?" she asks. He frowns, like reaching for something just out of range. "I think so. I remember enjoying it. It's the first thread of himself he's found since waking up in that alley." She watches something in his face, steady, just slightly, at having anything to hold on to. "Then that's your name," she says, "until you find your real one, Dmitri." He tests the word like it might not fit. "That's acceptable, I suppose." She'd expected to spend the morning worried about infection. Instead, when she goes to change the bandage, the skin underneath is smooth, not scarred, not healing, just gone, like the wound had never been there at all. She doesn't say anything about it out loud. Neither does he. But she notices him staring at his own side for a long moment after she leaves the room. On the landing, they run into her elderly neighbor, standing in his pajamas, unable to remember why he'd left his apartment. It's the third time this week she's found him like this. She's started to worry it's more than just old age. Dmitri goes still. His head tilts slightly, like he's listening for something underneath the silence. "Something strange," he murmurs, almost to himself. "Strange how?" He doesn't answer. He just looks troubled in a way that doesn't match the moment. Small mercies. He makes coffee before she's awake enough to ask for it. He remembers she takes it black, though she never told him that. She doesn't clock it as strange in the moment. It's only later, replaying the morning, that she'll wonder how he knew. Over the next few days, he doesn't just fix what's broken, he improves it. The cabinet door, the kitchen layout, a rotation schedule for checking on her neighbor down the hall that somehow gets adopted by the whole building without anyone remembering agreeing to it. "You have a way with people," Nell says one evening, "like you always know how to get them to do what you want." He stops on the stairs, genuinely searching her face. "Is that a bad thing?" "No," she says. "Just unusual." That night, she can't sleep, aware of him on the other side of the wall, in a way that has nothing to do with fear anymore. She finds him awake too, sitting at the window, watchful, like he's standing guard over something he can't name. Neither of them says what they're thinking, but something has shifted between them, quiet and undeniable. Breakfast the next morning is ordinary and warm, until Dmitri goes rigid mid-sentence, head snapping up, nostrils flaring like he's caught the edge of something no one else in the room can smell. "Can't you smell that?" he asks, urgent now. "Smell what? The bacon?" "No, something's wrong." He's out the door before she can stop him. She finds him hauling at a locked door on the ground floor, the boiler room, off limits, always locked. She's already picturing the conversation with her landlord about property damage when the door gives way with a crack. "Stop! You can't just. There's a leak," he says, already pulling her back toward the exit. "Carbon monoxide. We need to call now. Firefighters. Sirens." The fire chief, baffled, tells them carbon monoxide has no smell. No way anyone should have caught it before instruments would. Dmitri doesn't have an answer for that. Neither does Nell. She just watches him, filing away one more thing that doesn't add up. Her landlord arrives already annoyed, already minimizing. Everyone's overreacting. Dmitri's voice drops into something precise and cold. "You knew there was a problem, and you did nothing." It's the first time Nell sees him wield real authority, not anger, something colder and more absolute. For a moment, she almost doesn't recognize him. She pulls him aside before he can escalate further. Nobody here can afford lawyers. He's offering free rent. That's real help, right now. She watches him wrestle with it, watches the hard edge in him soften, watches him choose to let it go for her sake, not because he agrees. Who are you really, Dmitri? She wonders, watching him stare out at the storm. That evening, she goes to check his bandage out of habit and finds nothing underneath. No wound, no scar. Smooth skin, like it had healed weeks ago instead of hours. Neither of them can explain it. But in the quiet after, kneeling close together in lamplight, the space between them changes. He pulls back first, tells her he's better now, that he should give her space back. She feels the loss of it more than she expects to, surprised by how much she wants him to stay, with no good reason left to ask. "Keep the clothes," she says instead. "They fit you better anyway," he tells her, quiet and fierce, that what she did, sharing her home, her safety, with a stranger, wasn't nothing. That he doesn't think he was ever the kind of person who would have done the same. Then he's gone, and her apartment feels unbearably quiet. 2 days of pretending it doesn't bother her. Then the storm hits, the same kind of storm that first put him in her path, and she can't stop thinking about him, out in it with nothing. She finds him in the same alcove where she first found him. "You're still here? Just in case," he says, and something in the way he says it makes her chest tighten. Back at her apartment, neither of them sleeps. She finds him at the window in the dark, watchful, restless. The tension that's been building since the wound scene finally breaks. Not with words, with proximity, with the space between them finally closing. What follows isn't just romance, it's rhythm. Mornings with coffee, made exactly how she likes it. Him reorganizing her kitchen for efficiency. Him handling the building's small crises with a competence that keeps raising quiet questions she chooses not to ask yet. She starts noticing things she doesn't want to look at too closely. The flash of something predatory when another man flirts with her at the corner store. The low restraint in his voice some nights, like he's holding something back. But mostly, she just feels happy. Which, in hindsight, should have worried her more. A well-dressed stranger corners her outside their usual coffee shop, disgust twisting his face. He accuses her of ignoring who she's really with, of looking the other way because of what his money buys her. She has no idea what he's talking about. Not until he says a name that means nothing to her yet. Blake Storm. 2 hours combing through old business magazines. Every search confirms the same impossible thing. Blake Storm. Billionaire, ruthless acquisitions. A trail of companies gutted and abandoned. And in every photo, the same amber eyes she'd know anywhere. She throws the magazine at his chest. It lands open to his own face. Have you been lying to me? He can't answer fast enough. The silence damns him, more than any explanation could. She thinks of her tired reflection this morning, against his glossy magazine estate. The distance between their worlds has never felt more real, or more humiliating. Now that you know who you are, she says quietly, you can go home. Why would you choose this? She says, gesturing at her small apartment, when you could have that? Because you're not in there, he says, pointing at the photo of his estate. You're here, but it isn't enough. She tells him to leave. The word costs her something to say, but she says it anyway. He doesn't argue, he just breaks. Pain contorts his face, his body trembling, and before she can process what's happening, bones crack and stretch, and fur spreads across his skin. Where a man had been standing, there's now a wolf with the same amber eyes, staring at her for one heartbreaking second before leaping through the window and vanishing into the night. She stands in her shattered apartment, glass everywhere, and realizes the full shape of what just happened. Billionaire, wolf, gone. And somewhere underneath all of it, still the man who made her coffee and worried about her elderly neighbor. She grabs her coat. She has to find him. She's barely a block into her search when hands grab her from behind, a cloth over her mouth. The world goes dark. She wakes tied to a chair. 3 men circle her, waiting for someone they call the Alpha to come running. This was never about her. She was bait. A growl vibrates through the floor before he appears, bigger than before, fur dark as smoke, eyes locked on the blade at her throat. He fights 3 of them at once, wild and precise, blood running across the concrete. One by one they fall back, until only he's left standing, and then he collapses, human again, bleeding, beside her. She cradles his head in her hands, pressing uselessly against his wounds. What if I really am a monster? He asks, dazed. No, she says, fierce, even through her fear. I love you, Dmitri, whoever you were, whatever your name is. His eyes widen at the confession, and then he goes still in her arms. Before she can process it, people in tailored suits arrive. His people, sharp and efficient, treating his near death like a scheduling inconvenience. They revive him with something out of a briefcase, and the moment his eyes open, the man she knows disappears behind someone colder. He barks orders, rips apart a contract, dismisses her presence with a flatness that guts her more than any wound could. Escort her home, he says, not looking at her. Make sure she signs the NDAs. The gentle man who read to her in the evenings might as well have never existed. No word from him. Just lawyers, an NDA, a deposit that made her feel erased rather than cared for. A new job, thanks to his resume overhaul, that feels hollow with no one to share it with. Walking home in the rain, 2 weeks later, her feet carry her back to the place where it all started. She's standing in the exact spot she found him when the rain stops falling on her. An umbrella, held by the one person she both hoped and feared to see again. He explains everything. The curse, the ex-fiancé who placed it, the condition that could only be broken by someone loving him with nothing to offer but himself. He disappeared, not because he didn't care, but because he was afraid loving her openly would put her in danger again. I'm still all those things I was before, he admits. Ruthless, complicated, But I remember what I was like with you, and I liked that person more. She doesn't answer right away. She's allowed to be angry. She's allowed to need more than an apology. But when he asks for one more chance, and means it, she rises on her toes and closes the distance herself. The rain keeps falling around them. Neither one notices.